Hi, and welcome to the Zen Superman podcast. The episode today is for you if you're struggling with your uncontrollable anger, you cannot stop shouting, yelling, raising voice at your kids, and you're wondering where the heck is that coming from? Yes, okay, I'm stressed out, but that's not a reason for me to become this irrational monster and unleash it at my kids, because when I calm down logically in my brain, I know that's not the best way. And you cannot even, you don't gather it in your mind, where does it even come from? Because my parents did not yell at me. So I get it, I understand all these parents who grew up with yelling parents. If they now get stressed, they are just repeating the mistakes of their parents. But I have no excuse. My parents were amazing. My mom was so patient, so calm. Nothing you could ever do would throw her off balance. And yes, maybe my dad was absent and emotionally distant, but nobody ever yelled at me. Nobody ever punished me in any way. Nobody had to put any on me because I was such a good girl. So where is my anger coming from now? Please help me. If that's you, then let's talk, because this podcast episode is really meant to help you specifically. Let's go. Hi, I'm Elena and I'm a mommy tantrum specialist because I used to be specialist at yelling at my daughter daily. Now, 6 years fast forward, me and my team help busy, loving moms stop yelling, start setting healthy boundaries with natural consequences while staying calm so that the kids listen more. And one day when you look back at their childhood pictures, you will be able to feel at peace and happy with what a wonderful job you did. So that's what we do in this Zen Superman podcast, helping you find out why none of these parenting techniques, not even anger therapy and counseling, is ever going to help you get there. You need to understand the root. Where is all of your uncontrollable anger coming from? That's what this podcast is about. So, welcome to the Zen Superman podcast. Hi, I'm Alena, mommy tantrum specialist, because I used to be a specialist at having mommy tantrums and yelling at my daughter. And it could have been like a straight connection, rational explanation for me, because I was yelling for my daughter because my mom used to yell at me. Well, the explanation goes a little bit deeper, because if that's what it was, then reading some parenting books and learning some scripts and strategies would be enough, right? Logically, because it's not that I was so dumb that I couldn't learn better. I just couldn't manage that anger when I felt that it was so intense. I had to let it go out. So that's why I'm still, for the time being, organizing weekly live mommy tantrum trainings, once a month on average, also daddy tantrum trainings, where I explain and we go deeper into why that anger is so freaking intense, and no amount of logical, rational thinking, willpower, good resolutions for yourself, how good parent, how patient you're going to be, no amount of that is ever going to help you. You need to dig down to the reasons of it, which, spoiler alert, the reason is you have an unhealed childhood trauma. Yes, it's a trauma when somebody yelled at you. Now, the twist is, for a portion of people who reach out to me, and they're telling me, okay, this is all good, makes perfect sense for parents, for people who got yelled at when they were little, but that was not my case. Nobody ever yelled at me, or not every day, it was not a habit. I did not get these 1,000 paper cuts, because that's what I call it, when you're made feel that you're not good enough, you need to get better grades, you're not allowed to have big emotions, you're not allowed to say no, you're not allowed to say angry, because your parents would squish you and make you feel like, no, you do not deserve my hug right now. Those are actually 1,000 paper cuts. It looks like one of them would do nothing to your soul. But if that was the attitude of your parents day by day, all along your childhood, this is what is called generational developmental trauma. So again, I explain usually all of that in my free training, Mommy Tantrum training. And now I even have announcement, I even have a private podcast, which is a subsection of this podcast, which is now more than 120 episodes. Like, please do not listen to the entire 120 episodes to stop yelling at your kids. Like, they will be grown-ups by the time you finish. That's why I created a subsection, mini episodes for people who cannot join the live training because for some reason the timing doesn't work for them and they don't like that it's like time limited thing to join. So I created a mini podcast where you can go through exactly the same thing, the explanation. Where does your anger come from? How come you have no control over it, even though your smart brain already knows so much and exactly like what the problem is? That does not align. How to get out of it, okay? Then you can get it in the mini podcast. What I'm going to do here is go further, especially for those of you who cannot find the link with your childhood. You're still lost. You're like, I heard your training, I heard your podcast. It makes perfect sense for the other people, but not for me. And typically the scenario is exactly as I started describing it in the intro for this episode. Your mom was a saint. She was a saint. You don't ever remember her raising her voice at you. Maybe there were some fights with your father, other people, not with you. She had so much patience. She was doing it all. So often I hear like we were 3, 4, 5 kids at home. Father, I loved him. He was okay, but he was working way too much. Sometimes even the father is working like abroad or in some job that takes him away from home for weeks at a time. Or even if he's coming home, he's just like emotionally unavailable, distant. So he's there to provide. Everybody is so happy because you have the roof over your head, you have warm meal on the table, you have clean, nice clothes. So everybody is congratulating themselves like, amazing job. However, then you come back like 20, 30 years later, you arrive at a training, at a podcast like this, because you need help to stop yelling at your kids. And you're like, but these two things, that's not that. What is the link? That has nothing to do with my childhood. I had a happy childhood. I have nothing but gratitude for my parents who did so well because it was so tough. And my mom was a saint because how could she even raise 3, 4, 5 kids basically by herself, having so much patience for all of us? I am a failure because I have only 1 or 2 kids and I am losing it. How come my mom didn't? What's wrong with me? So then their attitude, their kind of like thinking process is, don't tell me I should blame it on my parents because they were amazing. It's me who's wrong. So it means it's not my childhood trauma. I just have anger issues. So I need to book myself for some anger therapy now or anger management classes, right? I don't know. Probably not. That's what I've seen with women who came to me after they have done anger management classes. And anyway, between 12 months to 20 years of talk therapy trying to figure this out. Yeah, usually when they spend less time in talk therapy, they are still hopeful. But when it comes to month 6, month 9, month 12, and they are still yelling, they are realizing like, oh, okay, like I need something faster because my kids are growing up. And in the meantime, I am traumatizing my kids because I don't have the patience my mom had. So let's take a breath. Let me help you as much as I can in a podcast, not having you one-on-one. Let me see what I can do for you. First thing, you do need to dig out the reason of your anger, okay? And I would like you to consider, and if you're here, then you are probably that far in your awareness. It is not about your kids, right? Because if you would still blame it on your kids, you would not be listening to the podcast. You know, this is actually the first podcast about parenting that's not about the kids. It's all about us as parents, our emotions. Because how can we be a good role model for our kids and expect them to have good emotional control if we can't actually demonstrate it and teach them how, right? Because it's not just about talking blah, 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 how they should behave, but it's about being a living example of it. Perfectly imperfect. Nobody wants to put you on a pedestal and like, don't ever yell at your kids, don't you dare, because no, I still raise my voice sometimes. Absolutely not as often, not as dangerously, not as frequently as I used to do. But it's completely normal to have all the emotions. It's great to normalize it for the kids. All we want to do is not to blame it on the kids and not to emotionally vomit, but express whatever valid emotions you're feeling, express it in a healthy way. Okay, so first step is always realizing what is the anger, what is it about, where is it coming from, and it has nothing to do with your kids. They triggered it. But then, exactly as the exercise I'm doing in the mommy tantrum training and in that mini podcast series, in the private podcast, you need to think back. When was the last time that you lost it? You felt that anger, resentment, frustration, it was rising through your body. You could not hold it together. Maybe oftentimes you can. Oftentimes you're able to like swallow it and keep it inside your body because you don't want to emotionally vomit all over your kids. But I'm going to invite you to think about the last time you couldn't. You couldn't keep it inside of you and you had to vomit it out at your kids. Think back, freeze frame, as if it was a movie, just before you you were taking your breath to yell, freeze frame, and then pay attention. What were the voices telling in your head? Okay, because I know it's happening so fast, usually don't even have the time to think about it. What were the voices? What was the story in your head? Okay, and usually it will be something along the lines of not feeling heard, not feeling respected, not feeling good enough, not feeling seen and recognized. Like everybody's getting what they want. How come I cannot do it? My mom was so good. How come I'm out of control? How did she do it? I cannot do it myself. There's something wrong with me. Yeah. How did that make you feel? The fact that you saw your kids not behaving the way you wanted, it was not enough to tell them nicely, just like it would have been enough for your mom to tell you nicely, because she didn't have to yell. You were listening the first time she asked, or at least maybe the second time she asked. Your kids are not. How does that make you feel? And do you feel like you have the tools to make them listen without yelling? Like, duh, you wouldn't be here if you did, right? So you don't. Why is that? Because your mom did not teach you. Again, not blaming her, not throwing your mom under the bus. She was amazing, okay? She was. Let's give her all the credit. This is not about blaming, shaming, putting any guilt on your mom. No, get that out of your head. You can still worship and adore her and be eternally grateful. She deserves it. But let's be honest. How come that even though she had so much to do, she didn't have to raise her voice? How come? Because there are only two options I see. Only two options. Either she had no boundaries and therefore you kids were like a jungle. Anybody did whatever, just rolled over your mom because she was the eternal pleaser. And rather than saying no to somebody, she just kept saying yes because she was avoiding and people pleasing. She didn't want to create any drama. So she just let you do. And then she let the father just give you one look. And she kind of made you afraid of him so that when he does come home, you don't want to make your father upset. So what strategies was she using? If any. Okay? Because then the other option, the other possible scenario is that there was somebody who scared you into obedience indeed. And maybe just did it so early on that you do not even remember. You don't have a visual memory of it. Because I'm going to tell you a secret. You're not a unicorn. It is not normal for kids to grow up being super obedient and listen the first time somebody asks them to do something. It is not normal. Kids are not born that way. Kids are raised and shaped and formed that way. And many of us remember because it kept happening all along our childhood because our moms, bless my mom, again, I'm eternally grateful for her. She's still my hero. But she kept yelling. She was so out of control, she couldn't stop it. So she kept yelling throughout my childhood. That's why I remember. My earliest memories are actually when I was about 4 or 5 years old, when I was hanging laundry with her, and she didn't even yell. She just criticized me in a way like that killed my self-confidence, because until then I was so proud of helping her hang the laundry in the good way. And then she just made one comment that completely like destroyed. And since then I became so insecure and so careful to do the things the right way so that I deserve her appreciation, which I felt I lost at that moment, or that I actually never had it and I was delusional. I thought she was so proud of me. And in that moment with her comment, she just made me realize she was not proud of me. I was not worthy of her praise, right? And so then there could be people, again, on the outside thinking like, what are you complaining about? She didn't even yell at you. And you're like saying, this is the root of you want to call it trauma. You're such a snowflake. Again, I'm going to refer you to my training where I explain exactly what is trauma, what different traumas, what the trauma spectrum is. But for the sake of coming back to the story, you need to go back to understanding that there was something that happened in your childhood. You were not born an obedient unicorn. No baby is. And usually if there is a client, as if there's a woman who comes and tells me, I don't remember anybody yelling at me because I always listened. I was so obedient. I was so good. They didn't have to yell. And so then I say with all of my compassion, let me give you a hug. But that's a sign of trauma itself. Because kids are born with the natural, how would I call it? Example, have you ever seen a baby who would not feel confident to express their needs as soon as they felt them? Have you ever seen a baby who would not cry as loud as they can when they are hungry, when they're not comfortable because their nappy is wet, when they are missing attention and they're missing the warmth and cuddles and they are feeling lonely and scared? Have you ever seen a baby who would not cry immediately the moment they feel these emotions? I didn't. And if you did, that would be actually a sign of that baby being traumatized even from early on, okay? That's not natural reaction. That's not normal development of a healthy human organism, okay? So then the same goes for a 2-year-old. If there is a 2-year-old who never says no to their parents, and they call it the terrible twos, right? Because most of the adults cannot handle it. But it is actually a normal stage of development. Kids are supposed to start saying no. Kids are supposed to start trying to get independence and like, me, I do it myself when they're like 3-4 years old. Because this is how they are growing their skills. This is how they are proving to themselves, I'm good enough because I can do the stuff that the big guys do. So that's a completely normal part of development. So if you're then coming here and telling me, my parents never had to yell at me because I was so good, then here it is. This is already your sign. There was somebody in your past who made you feel scared so early on, usually before you were 3 years old, because at around the age of 3-4 years old, the capacity of the brain develops to like keep and store long-term memories. So it's completely normal if you don't have any memories of you being younger than 3-4 years old, okay? Because that's the same for all of us. That's normal. But that would explain why you don't have any memories of your parents shouting at you, because there was something that happened between 0 and 3, 0 and 4, which was so intense that your body remembered, your subconscious mind remembered, it got scared enough for you to remember and start suppressing your emotions, start feeling it's not safe to express, it's not safe to ask for what I need, it's not safe to have a different opinion or not listen because I'm going to be punished. And usually at that age, it's even the fear of the baby is illogical. They make everything that is not safe around them or anything that they are not getting, they make it feel like it's their fault. They don't stop loving their parents because their parents are alcoholic, abusive, totally out of control, addicts, whatever, doing terrible stuff to them. They don't stop loving the parents. They stop loving themselves. Okay? So even if your parents were amazing, none of that horrible things happening to you, but if they have been very clear about what's required of you to get their love and attention, then you learn the lesson really fast. So early on that you don't even have any visual memory of it. Okay? Makes sense? That's one possible scenario. And that's about 50% of the cases, really half, because the other half is really the other case. It's a mom who was a people pleaser and who actually showed you how to sacrifice yourself, how to suck it up, and again, how to keep suppressing whatever needs you do have, because that will be selfish and lazy, because your job, your life role is to give. Exactly as she did. And because she did it so gracefully and calmly with so much patience, now you feel the pressure on yourself to live up to this potential and become like an extreme supermom yourself. And if there's any any emotion that wants to come out like through you, you feel like, oh no, I can't do that because my mom could handle it, so I have to handle it. And you're like trying to push it down. But then what happens? You keep squishing more and more layers of unmet needs, and you're doing things you don't want to do. You're doing more for others than you're even ever going to consider for yourself because you're not feeling good enough, and it's not okay to do something for me that would be selfish and lazy, and people would judge me, and then nobody would love me, and you keep squishing, and then your kids one day start growing up and start saying no. And start asking for more. Maybe they're not even disobedient, but they're just like clingy and they want more of your attention. They want more of your time. And you're like, what the heck? I'm already giving you so much. I had 5 siblings. You're like alone. You're a single child. I'm giving you so much more attention than I ever gotten. Like, how do you dare asking for more? I don't have more. I'm already giving everything to everybody. So the anger, it's like you're trying to squish it down, but it's becoming like a melting pot, you know how the pressure cooker, huh? Because the kids, all they do, this is a metaphor that just came to my mind. You keep squishing things in that pressure cooker. What your kid does is that they turn the heat on. Yes, they turn the heat on because the moment you become a mom, you have less time, you have more things to do, on top of everything else you were already doing before you became a mom. And then they start growing up. They become 2, 3, 4 years old. They are no more the little babies. You can just give them the bottle, change the nappy, and put them to sleep. They're gone. No. The more they grow up, the more the heat is turning on underneath your pressure cooker that's more and more full of stuff. The kids, they didn't put the stuff in your pressure cooker. It's not their responsibility to take it out in a healthy way. All your kids do, they turn the heat on. And that's why it blows up and explodes afterwards. Does that make sense? Yes or yes? Breathe. I know, it's a lot, it's intense. Those are the most usual 2 explanations why you cannot control your anger, even though you don't remember anybody yelling at you at home, ever. Now your turn. Do some exploration and digging. If you feel any avoider voices in you, like, what's the point? I had a happy childhood. I don't want to paint it all black just because some crazy lady tells me to. I want to keep my happy memories. Like, don't spoil it for me now. I want to protect it. I don't want to destroy my relationship with my parents. Like, it's okay. I hear you. I made podcast episodes about all of that. There's a podcast episode about how to not break your relationship with your parents while you do clean up your childhood trauma, because it needs to get cleaned up, because if you don't, you're going to give it to your kids anyway. So you're going to do even more damage. Okay. There is a podcast episode about avoider. I will need to do more about avoiders because I just met another woman as well who was telling me, I'm okay. And this is, I'm just like, kids need boundaries. And yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Yeah. Just don't vomit your emotional stuff from your pressure cooker on your kids. They don't deserve that. I have more episodes about all of these things. But I really need you to focus now. Do start digging. Because there is a reason why, especially if you have such a smart brain and you know so much about kids' development and you have so much awareness and parenting and you love gentle parenting and all of these things, there is a reason The stronger your emotions are, the less in control you feel you are, the more scared and frightened you are of them, of yourself in those moments, the more it is a sign of trauma. And however you want to call it, you don't want to call it trauma, call it 1000 paper cuts. I don't care. Again, let's not avoid, let's not use that as an excuse for you to say, no, not me, no trauma, bye, I love my parents, cool, bye. Like, no, that's not you. You're not going to be the avoider, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have stayed here all the way until now in this podcast episode. So step number 1, look back in your past. And if you have any other than these 2 most frequent types I mentioned, please do reach out. Do reach out. Okay, because that's also what I'm offering in those free mommy tantrum trainings, and even in that like mini podcast I created that we will link for you below. This is exactly what I'm offering as the next step, still for free, because I believe like this is the key thing we can do for not just saving your family, but saving this world by putting less traumatized people on it and raising less traumatized generations. We need to talk one-on-one. That's why I keep offering these assessment calls. I can still do it. My calendar is getting stretched out to maximum, so I'm already training my team so that they can start helping me and there can be more people doing these assessment calls. Take the advantage. For the time being, it's still me, so you would talk directly to me so that I could help you dig out and connect the dots if you have something else than these 2 examples that I mentioned. If you're yelling at your kids, your parents were great, they never yelled, and you have no idea how that links and where your anger is coming from, okay? Then come and reach out. You are invited, okay? Sounds good? Why we are doing that, why we need to dig out the root of your anger, because that will inform you of the next steps you need to take. How do you want to sort it out? How do you want to heal it? How do you want to stop yelling if you don't know why you keep yelling in the first place, right? And it's not just the stress. It's not just that your kids are not listening. You already know. You've already worked that far. There is something in you that needs to get understood and worked with and healed in a relatively fast way so that you stop giving it over to your kids and you stop making them feel not good enough and make them feeling like you're not safe and they need to tiptoe around you before you unleash again. Right? That's why we are doing this. That's why it's worth it. And that's why I want to help you do it fast. So take the offer, right? Let me appreciate you. You're one heck of a brave, courageous supermom. And I see you, well, even though I cannot see you physically, that's the energy with which I'm connecting. That's the energy I'm like intentionally bringing up in myself to connect and keep attracting women who understand what I mean, who resonate with it, and who are ready to get the help. I'm not here to convince, and you will see there are haters online and making comments in different places. I'm not disturbed by that. I'm not going to let that steal away my peace. I practice what I preach. I'm not here to convince anybody of anything. I'm intentionally very directly and very openly speaking about what is true for me and what I believe in and what I know it's possible to heal, because I want to attract women like you who are ready to get the help so that we can, like, in all of that noise and overwhelm of the internet, we can find each other and we can get this done once for all. Okay? So whenever you're ready, reach out, make a sign. Hopefully it will be fast enough so that you can still get the assessment call with me, not with one of my team, which I'm going to train to do this in the coming weeks. And let's get you the help you need, finally. Okay? Take very good care. Until then, Supermom. Bye. Why can't you stop yelling at your kids? And no, it's not the stress, lack of sleep, kids not listening, fighting, hitting, no support, time pressure, ADHD, hormones. No, moms around the world are doing it regardless. How? Join us for the upcoming Mommy Tantrum training and find out too.